On today's episode of the podcast, we hear from Paul Koczera. Paul, you know from his days at TRT, maybe out running the Freedoms Run races, and recently he started a program called Wild Strength and Conditioning and a program called the Wild Method. He breaks down why it's important to move in a natural and healthy way, as well as why getting in touch with nature is important. Let's hear what Paul has to say. Have you heard of Bracken's painting? I started Bracken's painting back in 2011. We do both residential and commercial painting. We have contractor's licenses in West Virginia and Virginia, and we carry all the necessary insurances like workers' comp, general liability. We operate a small staff that focuses on meeting the homeowner's needs and project managers' timeline expectations. We try to have exceptional attention to detail. If you're interested in doing any sort of commercial or residential painting, please contact Bracken's Painting. More information can be found at www.brackenspainting.com.
This podcast is brought to you by City National Bank in Ransom, West Virginia. I am Melissa Knott and manage both of our Jefferson County locations. Our Charlestown location is located on George Street in Charlestown, and the Ransom location is located in the Potomac Marketplace Shopping Center. City National Bank is a full-service community bank that provides an array of financial services. We offer a range of free checking accounts and savings products for both consumer and business customers. City National Bank offers competitive low-rate and low-cost lending products for both business and personal needs. Come and talk to me or one of my team members and get products and services that are tailored to fit your schedule and help you to achieve your financial goals. I can be reached at both the Ransom and Charlestown locations. Check out our website at www.bankatcity.com.
Have you heard of the Try This West Virginia conference? If you're somebody who is working to build a healthier West Virginia, then you should join the over 500 like-minded people this year at the 7th annual conference. It's in Buckhannon, West Virginia. This year it's on June 12th and June 13th. Go there to learn about grassroots efforts that are taking place from all around the state, from community gardens to yoga in schools, running and biking programs, and even maybe building a community recreation center. Once you've networked around the conference, there's also opportunities to learn how to apply for grant funding for a project in your own community. Enjoy 2 days of healthy food, physical activity, and mindful living. Register before March 15th for early bird rates at trythiswv.com/conference. Okay, Paul, thank you for being on the Break It Down for Bracken's podcast.
Thank you, bro. It's a pleasure to be here, Kevin. You got me out in about 40-degree weather, so...
I know. You know what? I forgot to mention. Welcome to the COVID-19 studios. We are sitting about 7 feet apart, practicing social distancing. It's a very light breeze, but it is definitely chilly in the shade. So we are going to talk all about Paul and the cool fitness things he's doing. So let's start with your background. Tell me about where you come from, where you went to school, family, that sort of stuff.
Yes. So I was born Fairfax, Virginia, but raised here in Jefferson County, wild and wonderful West Virginia.
Right.
And wouldn't want it any other way. When my parents first moved here in 1988, obviously it was not nearly as developed as it is. And the community that they moved to, Eastland on Old Cave Road, was mostly an apple orchard at that time. So it was a great place to be a kid. I had have two brothers and 2 sisters, and we were homeschooled growing up. So that's kind of where my introduction to healthy living got started, was as a family unit. My mom would kick us out as soon as school was done, which obviously we were trying to get done as soon as possible. And on a good day, that's noon.
Nice.
And then from noon till about 6 p.m., we were outside just playing, getting dirty, ruining clothes, and just trying to continue that now.
Right. So, college?
College. Hopped around a little bit. After graduating Jefferson High School, I went to WVU, started getting into the business college there, but realized it just wasn't what I was looking for. So left my junior year. After my first semester as a junior, I left and looked at other industries, got into car mechanics for a little bit, was customer service rep for a little bit, ultimately fell back on my my fitness and my athletic abilities and decided to put that to the test in the military. So I left college for a little bit, got into the U.S. Air Force. After getting out of the U.S. Air Force, that's when I decided to go to Shepherd University. And
I definitely did not know you were in the Air Force.
yeah.
How many years in the Air Force?
So that's a story in itself. That is a story where really my whole holistic journey got started in the health and wellness space. I trained for 10.5 months pre-enlistment to qualify for the Air Force's combat control job. Once I qualified for it, I then went to boot camp, and from the time of boot camp to separation, I was in for a year. In the combat control pipeline, I was active for about 7.5 months before I had 2 Chiari malformation episodes. And Chiari malformation is a spatial deformation in the back of your skull.
Okay.
And in the base of the brain. So essentially, I was born with too little space between the base of the brain and the spinal tissue.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm at risk for those 2 tissues to touch. We don't want things touching the base of the brain.
Okay.
People that are born with Chiari malformation on varying severities may need surgical intervention from birth to go in there and shave out some of that spinal tissue.
Well, the base of the brain, that's the mammalian brain. You're talking about like basic, all the basic functions,
That's where
right?
a lot of the functions start, in development. So those episodes for me were triggered. In retrospect, I'm searching for the why. Why did this happen to me? Like,
Well, hold on. So for your whole life, you didn't know.
didn't know. I
then-
went in at 25. The fittest I'd ever been.
Right. And then through training, maybe like explosions or whatever you were working around, something jostled you, I guess? Or?
No, so I was not deployed. I was just in the combat control pipeline.
Right.
The training pipeline for combat control averages about 18 months. It's a long pipeline.
Yeah.
And if you're not set back due to any medical
Yeah,
reason,
injuries, yeah, sure.
you might get through in 12 months. But even so, the average was about 18 months at the time that I was in. So it's a marathon of a pipeline. And I remember my fellow airmen and the cadre, they would all say, that the fastest way out of the pipeline is when you see a doctor. Because if you get set back, the chances of you making it through that pipeline, are severely diminished.
And that's a special operations unit, correct?
Yes. So there, at any given time, only about 350 to 400 combat control operators globally.
Okay.
So it's a small brotherhood.
Nice.
And the other special forces in the Air Force are the EOD squad that the Air Force has.
Right.
Pararescue.
Right. That's the one that comes to mind initially.
That's the one that is more widely known as the Special Forces unit for the U.S. Air Force. And then they have their SEER unit. They're not actively deployed. SEER unit are your survival trainers.
Right.
So anyone that goes on a plane in the military needs to go through SEER training.
Right.
So they know how to survive and escape and recover and evade if a plane was to go down or they needed to deploy because a plane was going down and, they need to survive, get away from being captured and
Okay.
and all that. Yeah.
So you were still in the training pipeline, and then you had some sort of episode, and that's just like...
So it really debilitated me on the spot. I thought in the first episode that I either ruptured muscle in the back of my neck or slipped vertebrae in the cervical spine. It was that intense of a, I don't know what to call it, an experience.
Right.
You know, so vision gone for a split second, debilitating nausea. You know, the most comfortable position for me was laying down on the ground.
Wow.
Right. So they turned their head to the first episode, you know, because the fastest way out of the pipeline is to go to the doctor. So they turned their head to the first episode. Second episode sent me to the ER, CAT scan, MRI.
And then boom.
Yep. And then I was...
That changed your course for sure. So after the Air Force, that's when you ended up at Shepherd University?
Well,
Or
I
no?
did take, before going to Shepherd, I did take a job at the wonderful casino.
Oh, okay, nice, yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, what am I going to do with my military experience? Well, this security job at the casino would probably look at that military experience and want me, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in as a security guard for the casino, but soon realized that you were more just a door check, you know, checking IDs at the door, and
Yeah.
it wasn't really security.
Right, exactly.
So
Doorman.
yeah, I was a glorified doorman. So that was pretty short-lived. After a couple months of that, I really decided I needed to get back to school and focus on my education.
How old were you at this point?
So mid-20s.
Okay.
Yep. Enrolled in Shepherd in 2010. And right around that time was when Dr. Mark was launching Two Rivers Treads. I decided to really figure out what the heck was going on with my anatomy and my wellness. So I decided,
with the episodes you had, you were like, oh, let's figure out the body or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then, so what did you decide to study at Shepherd?
exercise science in their
Right.
health and recreation and leisure program.
And before we get to that, did you play any sports in high school, or did you like?
I did.
What was?
I loved sports growing up. It was actually what got me into the public school system. After being homeschooled up
Right.
until 7th grade, in order to continue playing sports, I was too old for county sports at that time. So I needed to enroll in the public school system to continue sports. And my sports were baseball, football, and wrestling.
Oh, cool. Wow, dude. So with that injury, you're in wrestling, you're in football.
Right, and never triggered it.
Wow.
Yeah, so
You're lucky, man. I mean, and to be at a facility that could diagnose you the way the Air Force could,
they took
that's a
great care
real
of me.
blessing. Very good blessing there. But you, man, you probably had a lot of missed calls. I mean, or just close calls, rather.
I can't, looking back, I remember, some hard hits in football,
Sure.
but, I chalked that up to being concussed.
Mm-hmm.
But I can certainly see where, having that deformation put me, at more risk to a concussion really being more painful and a detriment to my health.
And that journey through a special operations training in the military, you were really pushing it. And anyways, and I mean, but anyway, that brings us forward to you figuring out how the body works through studying exercise science, and then pairing up with Two Rivers Treads and Dr. Mark, and
that's where it all started, from the ground up, baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I in the last month of training saw one of my cadre wearing Vibram 5 fingers.
Sure.
It's the first time, this is 2008, so they had really just hit the market shortly before that. First time I'd ever seen them. And me and the other airmen in the pipeline, we'd always talk about, getting our beret, graduating, and, going through the armory and just, with a shopping cart and putting the guns and the gear and stacking it all up. So I'm seeing our cadre wear these separated toe shoes. I'm like, what is that?
Right.
Is that some spec op
Special,
issued footwear that we get, upon graduation? Because if it is, I'm in.
Right.
Didn't see it after that. Didn't see it mainstream or in the public while I was working that security guard.
Right.
I was walking down Shepherdstown's Main Street, and sure enough, I'm walking by Dr. Mark's store. I didn't know Dr. Mark at this time, didn't know Two Rivers Treads. I just looked in the window, and I saw Vibram 5 Fingers. I was like, oh my God, it's not some spec obscured shoe.
It's like right here in the town you live in.
It's for everybody. So that's what actually got me to go into Two Rivers Treads for the first time, was seeing the freaky toe shoes.
Nice. And then
Tried them on.
Pick up a slick part-time job.
So, yeah. Hit it off with Dr. Mark and one of his first associates, Cody Marsh. Really super cool dude. He was younger than me, but just welcomed me to the town, welcomed me to the shop, gave me a little dive on minimal footwear. At that time, they had like 3 Newtons, 2 Innovates, and 5 Fingers.
That was it. Right.
So
that was the beginning.
Yeah. So it couldn't have been a better fit for me. I couldn't have asked for a better community to step into. At that time, I didn't know what I was stepping into with Dr. Mark, but he was just figuring out his journey, because shortly before opening Two Rivers Treads, he was told, don't run because your feet are all jacked up, from you tried surgery, right? And you, even with a corrective surgery, you're still hurting.
Right.
So just avoid it. And I was kind of given the same prescription by the Air Force doctors. They took great care of me, but they didn't understand the ins and outs of it. I was the first case of Chiari malformation in the combat control pipeline.
Right.
So I understand a lot of liability. So it's just easier to separate me and tell me, just avoid the stuff that hurts you.
Yeah. Right.
And,
That's
and
that's how a lot of prescriptions are.
Yeah. So Dr. Mark challenged that. He was the first person that said, well, maybe there's another way, and who knows? Maybe if you start from the ground up.
See, knowing Dr. Mark, it seems like he's been doing it for 50 years.
Right?
He seems like I had no idea that was getting started back in 2010, somewhere in that range. But like in my mind, he's always had a running store. He's always been pushing this healthy movement, healthy running mantra, and it's amazing that he was such a good runner doing it unhealthy, and now he's super healthy. Man, he's an amazing guy.
And I find many of us in the Two Rivers Treads community have found it because we came in broken.
Okay.
Dr. Mark was broken, and that's what got him started. I was broken, and that's what got me started. I think that's common.
So, whether it was TRT or the Freedoms Run race series, tell me a story or two about some of the highlights of working with Dr. Mark or with that foundation.
Just a wealth of knowledge to learn from. So I was going to school and then going to work and applying the concepts from the textbooks, and then from the knowledge he was giving me, the books he was putting in front of me.
Right.
And I'd get to meet doctors that were in his network, like Dr. Maffetone, Blaise Dubois from Canada.
These are big names.
Big names, and I didn't know how big at the time, but they're thought leaders, they're industry leaders, and he's bringing them in, and so I'm getting this rich, robust educational experience, and that's what naturally started occurring on the sales floor of Two Rivers Treads. We just started educating. Like, I was just so full of knowledge, I just wanted to share it with people. Like, you're in a shoe store, but we're telling you to take your shoes off, but also buy some shoes, and here's why.
I know, right?
And so it's a huge paradigm shift for me on many levels. I mean, how many retail stores want an average talk time with every person that walks in to be 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Not many.
Right.
So, but it worked because Dr. Mark was providing that space for really us to just develop ourselves through education and experience. So some of the highlights are people walking out with $700 worth of shoes, and they've got the biggest smile on their face because they're walking out with an investment in their health and in an understanding of moving forward. They're not just walking out with the latest and greatest flashy shoe.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was really just knowing people were leaving that place equipped and enriched with an experience that they had with myself or another sales specialist on the floor.
Oh, yeah. It's true. The staff over there is always so well educated and so well in tune with the message that the store and Dr. Mark's culture is trying to spread. It's awesome. Speaking of, like, when Dr. Mark, like, here he is hanging out with you, or all of a sudden he's talking to me. I was at the Try This conference with him a couple years ago, and he was like, hey, after dinner, let's go out and talk on the Frisbee field. Everybody's throwing Frisbees. It's one of those conferences that there's a lot of things going on in the evening. And I said, sure. So I walk out of the dining facility, and Dr. Mark's on a phone call, and he kind of looks at me and goes, I'll be over there in about 10 minutes. And I said, okay, cool. So I walk over, and, there's a cooler of beers by some guys throwing Frisbee, and we're hanging out and having a beer. And he comes over. He's like, all right, cool, let's talk about, I can't remember what the topic was at the time. It was something to do with bros and bras or fitness or things out of the shop or whatever, right? He's like, oh, sorry about that. That ran a little longer. I was on a conference call with Ian Adamson, and I are discussing with the International Olympic Committee about blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? Oh, man. I said, Ian Adamson?
The greatest adventure athlete of all time.
Yeah, are you talking about, like, isn't he like an old adventure racer, an ultra running, like, world champion? He's like, oh, yeah, you know Ian? I said, no, man, no, I don't know him, but I've read about him in magazines back before the internet was kind of big.
Right,
and then
right.
he was like a role model, and I watched all of his videos to see what did he carry, how did he canoe, how did he rock climb or whatever. I said he was a role model. He's like, oh, he comes to town like twice a year, so I'll make sure we get together for lunch. And I'm like, what bro? No, Dr. Mark. Like, and now we're going to talk about a Thursday afternoon running group? Like, come on, man. Like, so it's amazing.
He just pulls it out of his back pocket. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he's in it for him. It's just everyday occurrence. And
Yep.
at the same conference, we were both presenting there. I swear, like, the deans of medicine were climbing over chairs to get to him, and like were literally walking on top of me. Dr. Mark just wanted to catch up with. I was like, man, this guy. I'm sitting next to this guy. He's a badass,
rock star. Yeah.
But and he always takes the time to make sure he introduces everybody around him to some of these higher ups. And I try to explain to people what an incredible resource it is for our running club to have a world-renowned running doctor, like, in our pocket. And like I was talking to somebody about how we go to these clinics, and he's like, "Wait, you have clinics like every week?" I said, "Yeah, pretty much like every week, every 10 days, or something happening." They're like, "My God, we gotta pay for those. Like, when he comes to town, we gotta pay." And there's like a wait list to get in. I said, "Oh yeah, we have them on Thursdays."
Yeah, we had some people coming from California just to come to Rivers Treads when I was working there.
Were you involved with that, like, master's class that he has once or twice a year? You had to have been involved with
Expound
it.
on that.
There's a class where they meet over at the hospital under the gazebo, and then they go other places.
Oh,
It's like-
healthy running.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So, I was...
That's one for adults, like for like even doctors and things, right?
It was healthy running, still going on.
Uh-huh.
Hope it never ends because it's a great resource. But that's where he was bringing in. Actually, let me rewind. He started that with Ian Adamson.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Started that with Ian Adamson. Got Jay Deshari, who's another world-renowned professional. He's in PT,
Uh-huh.
physical therapy, biomechanics, best in the business. And then he ultimately brought on Dr. Phil Maffetone too. So think about that lineup.
Huge.
Dr. Mark, Ian Addison, Phil Maffetone, and then you've got Jay Deshari. So it was incredible lineup of professionals. So yeah, me coming in there, I was definitely the dumbest guy in the room, but I felt so special because
Right.
I was up there with with them and being introduced. At that time, I was also working with True Form Runner, and that was kind of my segment, was introducing the True Form to all the participants, going over the benefits of why a motorless curved treadmill is beneficial, and also I had my hand in creating the best practices on that type of equipment. So it was a special event to be a part of.
But so that class though is like 2 or 3 days, right?
Healthy running, yeah. 2 days. He's done some in Dubai
But that
for like 3 days, yeah.
so that class though, it teaches you. Is it heavy on the science side of the mechanics, or is it all about just function? Or
There's hands-on, there's PowerPoint presentations, breakout sessions with, he's had Laura Bergman be a part of it. So, Laura will do some of her specialty stuff. So if he brings on other movement specialists or professionals, they do kind of get their time with small groups. Everyone kind of breaks up into a little group, and you rotate through everybody's
nice
segment.
So let's jump over to the True Form. How did you get involved with them?
So I got involved with True Form through Dr. Mark. Oh, imagine that!
Right. and what level of how involved did you get with that company?
Yeah, so they rolled up to Two Rivers Treads because they found out that Dr. Mark was kind of the man they needed to bring the True Form to get validated. It didn't have a name at that point. It wasn't a True Form runner. It was just a curved and non-motorized prototype treadmill.
Wow.
That Jeff and Robin Vernon put in the back of their truck and dropped it off in front of Dr. Mark and said, "Hey, do we have what we think we have, which is a tool that will help teach people the skill of running, not just allow them to increase their mileage." So when I think of treadmill running, I think of clicking a speed or being on it for a certain amount of time at a certain pace. It was all quantitatively based.
And you're just hopping.
Right.
Just hopping.
But you get on the True Form at that point in this prototype, and it was immediately, the quality of my movement absolutely matters on this thing. And so Dr. Mark said, yeah, you do have what you think you have. This can help teach people the skill of running. And I wouldn't say teach now that I know what I know. I would say kind of what, going back to what you and I were talking pre-show, is these movements, these motions they're in our DNA. The
Right.
code is there. So it's not teaching you the skill of running. It's just
reminding you.
It's reminding you. It's a program that just needs to be
describe
brought
how,
to the
for
service.
anybody who doesn't know about the True Form, describe what it forces you to do. And again, when he said there's no motor, and it has a kind of a kidney bean looking curve to it, which is really strange also. So when you step on it, the belt will move, and then you're naturally your next step, and then your next step. But if you don't have proper running form or technique, you feel really wonky, and after a certain amount of time, your body will adjust, and all of a sudden you are running correctly. It has to do with how long your body can run correctly now to determine your level of running, efficient running fitness, I guess, is how my simple explanation would be.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a self-propelled treadmill. So you have to create all the energy to mill the belt. Now, because of the curve, which mechanically is there to assist the flow of the belt, we found a byproduct the adaptation a human needs to make to that slight curve is shortening up their stride, landing a little closer to their center of mass. And on the flip side of that, if your stride got too far out in front of you, and which would be categorized or described as an overstride, you would immediately feel the difference between the two. And that's where the teaching moment occurs, is you feel the difference. You feel the difference between a step that was a little too far out in front of you and a step that was in the perfect sweet spot, slightly in front of your center of mass. And that's how we learn movement. We learn by feel.
Was this by accident, or did the developers really put a lot of effort into?
Good question. It's probably a question we'll never know.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
But I know the answer they'll probably give. Yes, absolutely.
Of course. Yes, definitely.
This degree of curve was engineered from the get-go.
Perfect, right.
Yeah, to make it the best. Now, that is what separates self-propelled treadmills that have a curve, is the degree of the curve.
Huh.
And we found with the true form, in comparison to other self-propelled treadmills with a curve, that true form actually had the one that more populations could control. So I could have the elderly on it. I could have toddlers on it.
Right.
I could have pro athletes on it. I could have the recreational athlete on it, and everywhere in between. And that was really, to me, what separated us. Whether it was by accident or on purpose, our curve allowed more people to learn from it, whereas a higher degree of curve,
Right.
really limited to only very competent athletes to be on it.
I see that.
You had to be strong, you had to be coordinated, you had to be balanced in order to mill that belt and not fall on your face.
Right. So, knowing all that, what did you do for true form? If I remember correctly, you did quite a bit of traveling. I remember seeing social media. You'd be in one town or another town and cruising around with these things.
What I did for true form, I wore a lot of hats because they were a startup. So we were all wearing a lot of hats. The main hat that I wore, though, was directing their education and their training based on that education. So it was my job to educate the public on why is this a better thing than a motorized treadmill or other self-propelled treadmills. So it was my job to compare and contrast, consider human anatomy and human movement amongst all these different pieces of equipment, and develop our answer. What separates us from what else is out there? And then getting that message not only to the public, but more importantly, people that are interested in buying our equipment to train others. So very often I was traveling to gyms and CrossFit boxes and PT
I feel like
studios.
I saw him show up more in CrossFit boxes. And then eventually, I think, wasn't true form at one of the games?
Yeah, so I think it was 2015, 2016, they got the true forms at the regional games. Global platform for them, amazing.
Right.
Taking it to CrossFit, again, my job was to help educate Dave Castro and Greg Glassman, alongside of Jeff and Robin. We were all there to help them see what we already knew. And some communities or parts of the fitness industry don't want new stuff,
Right.
because it comes along with the responsibility of educating people about that new thing.
Right.
And sometimes it's a lot of work. I'd say
Sure.
most of the time it's a lot of work. And what was cool about the CrossFit community was they were very open to it, because they were teaching the skill component to everything else they were doing. So we were just bringing them a tool to help them, teach people the skill of running.
And I feel like notoriously CrossFit does not like running.
No,
I feel like they absolutely hate running. And
I'm still looking for that CrossFitter that likes to run.
right, I think she's inside.
Jenny.
Yeah, she did quite a bit of CrossFit, and then she was running at the same time, and it really was part of her strength training that she did there. Really has made her a successful runner. That foundation. With that, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the new things that Paul is getting into.
New and improved.
Be right back.
Yeah.
One of my friends from the Leadership West Virginia program, Rob Passmore, is this year's race director for the Poco River 15K. The Poco River 15K is West Virginia's oldest road race, and this year it is held on May 2nd. Poca is just a few miles north of Charleston, West Virginia. This year's course is the same as the older course because the new bridge has been built and they can run across the bridge and complete the loop. If you want to learn more about this 15K, which comes out to 9.3 miles, you can look it up, Poca, P-O-C-A, River Run on Facebook.com or Poca River Run on runsignup.com. And we're back.
Hey.
Okay, Paul. So, kind of went over all the background, working with Dr. Mark, experience with True Form runners, the True Form runner. Tell me about the running camps you helped to develop, and where are those taking place?
Yeah, so the running camps that I helped develop was when I was working as a community outreach coordinator for AmeriCorps. And guess who got that opportunity in place for me? Can you guess?
Dr. Mark.
Dr. Mark.
Nice.
Bum, bum. So Dr. Mark, I needed to take a break from True Form. I fell in love with a girl, and I also just had some personal things in my life that I needed to take care of. So I decided to stop all the travel, step down from working with True Form. Dr. Mark said, hey, have you ever heard of AmeriCorps? They have a VISTA program, so you work at the community level as a outreach coordinator, and you do cool stuff. Do you want to be a part of it? Sure, let's do it. So I step into that role, and one of the projects that I worked on was developing a running camp. Dr. Mark has always wanted a youth running camp of some sort in the county, and so I partnered up with Katie, who is the Freedoms Run director, race director, and of course she's just knows how to put on an amazing event. So I was very fortunate to work with her, and we
podcasted her about 3 weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
yeah, her and Sarah
Sweet.
About their whole race series. It's really good. Did you hear it?
All right, can't wait. So so Katie and I put together an affordable but high quality youth running camp for middle schoolers and high schoolers, and it took place in Shepherdstown. We had them running all over town. We had them at James Rumsey was kind of the epicenter. Funny story is there's no bathrooms at James Rumsey Park, so Dr. Mark, just one of his credos or mottos is it's sometimes easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission.
Right.
And so we don't have the permits for porta potties, but we have porta potties. So we just kind of tucked them in to a little nook behind some trees.
Right.
So we end up putting together this awesome youth running camp experience.
How many days is the camp?
We did 3 days.
Okay. How many participants?
We had, I believe, over 50 in each.
Nice.
Yeah. Safe estimates there. They are still continuing. So that was in 2017. They have continued each year since, and now there's an adult camp option.
Yeah, I heard about that too. That's awesome.
So it's cool to see that it's still going on and growing. I hope that I can be a part of the adult camp as a strength and conditioning specialist too.
Nice. So what kind of youth would come to a running camp like this?
So a lot of...
And then at the same time, I don't remember going to running camp when I was younger.
No.
They may not have existed, but how much running can you do at camp?
Exactly. So our camp was all about supporting running with health and fitness. So we had Patrick Four there teaching yoga. We had another yoga instructor from Jala Yoga there, teaching them kind of the restorative properties that yoga can offer your health. We had Laura Bergman there teaching them all about their fascia and mobility and stability, properly using a foam roller, what is a foam roller, all of that. So equipping him with those recovery methods. And then I was there. We wheeled True Form runners out to Rumsey Park. So we had the handrails off. It was just the bases.
Wow.
So we have some awesome videos of these kids just going from a walk, to a jog, to all-out sprints on the bases of True Forms.
That's really neat.
And then being outdoors, being barefoot. So it's really this holistic, comprehensive running camp. Because to your point, every running camp that I've seen has been like the Nike running camp or the Adidas running camp. And yeah, you just show up at the track and you run.
Right.
And you might do some warm-up drills, maybe some strength and conditioning stuff.
Stretching.
Yep, but
Right.
more or less.
It's like going to a track workout.
Yep, it's a track workout. So we wanted to bring nature in. We brought nutrition in.
I saw a picture of you guys running across the river.
Yeah, they did a river crossing. So, that challenge aspect of overcoming an obstacle, literally.
Right.
But also, hopefully retrospect, these kids walk away from it and say, oh my gosh, look what we did today. Like,
Yeah.
I never thought I'd cross the the Potomac River, but I did, and maybe be more confident because of that. So, yeah,
They'll hold on to that for a very long time in their memory. So let's with the success of that programming and those camps, let's talk about that part, the natural movement, and why that's important because that's something that I've always seen you working on. And frankly, every time I've seen you, in particular at TRT, you were always mobilizing or stretching or correctoing, and you've got like the perfect example of monkey feet.
yeah, buddy.
He has his feet look like a monkey's foot, and most people don't have that, and I only have a small portion of separated toes. I'm lucky because I also practice
Kevin,
a lot
do
of
you
things.
have all your toes?
I have all my toes.
Okay, good.
Yes, one or two are frozen right now. But the correct toes is a thing that separates your toes and makes your feet splay out a little bit more. And I find, and again, you can correct me because I could be totally wrong in this, I find the more natural movement I do, in particular with running or lifting, by wearing minimalist shoes or shoes that support the barefoot kind of concepts of movement. Just like if I'm working my biceps or my chest or my back or some other muscles lifting weights, my feet grew and they splayed out, and I went from a 9.5 to an 11.5 shoe in the course of a year and a half.
Very common.
Right, and
Correct.
that's, no one's ever thinking about that.
No.
They think when you're grown up, okay, yeah, forever I'm going to be a 9.5 size 10,
And
somewhere in that
and
range.
For guys, it's not that bad. Like,
Mhm.
we can, all right, my foot got bigger. There's some positive connotations that are attached to that.
Right.
However, women, not so much.
Yeah.
You never want to tell a woman that her foot could potentially grow, or not grow, or increase in size
Right.
by 1 or 2 sizes. That's not what they want to hear. So,
No, definitely not. And
so when you're trying to sell it,
yeah.
keep that information to yourself.
Totally right. Well, but the thing is, it's kind of obvious without thinking of it. But if you work your feet out and your feet are moving naturally and you're engaging with the muscles in your feet as best you can, your feet will gain muscle and
Yeah.
flexibility to some extent. So walk me through why one is better than the other.
Well, let's build off of that point that you're bringing up with the feet. To me, it sounds like you're saying the foot is almost forgotten about in regards to its ability, to have muscle mass.
Sure, right.
Right? Because you're thinking, especially as a male, of your upper body, right?
Yep.
Or your thighs. But we're not thinking about the size of our feet.
Right.
So what I see day in and day out working with people, whether it's pro athletes or the Gen Pop, is sometimes very well conditioned people from the ankles up. They look, very equipped and competent, defined, and powerful, but they take their shoes off and I look like I'm looking at two wrinkled sausages, just these atrophied pieces of body. And it's the same thing when somebody skips leg day for their whole life and they have this incredible upper body, but they got toothpicks for legs.
Right.
Well, the feet are no different, right? It's attached to our body. So in our culture, the foot and the feet are forgotten. And that's really how I like to look at movement as a whole, right? Because if we've eliminated the foundation of our body, what are the repercussions of that holistically as it pertains to movement? How much has normal been changed because we've forgotten about our feet? So when the feet are one of the strongest parts of the body now, how does that change movement as a whole? And for me, what I've found, because when you're first starting to restore the function of your feet and build that strength and power that you didn't have before, it's pretty slow going. You can only run so much barefoot before you have to stop and walk.
Right. And
you have had that
when
experience.
Vibrams first came out, there was all this blowback that people were doing too many miles too fast in those barefoot shoes, and you're not ready for it.
No.
They weren't ready for it.
So guess what? I had to stop, just like everybody does, and I was barefoot, so I was feeling that connection, and there isn't a connection to the ground when you're barefoot. The negative component, correct, we'll have to look, but either the ground is negative or we're negative, or the ground's positive, we're negative, I don't know.
Right.
But that positive and negative connection between our body and the earth, you have that direct feed. And for me, when I was taking those breaks from running, I was either just getting down on the ground and moving around, just kind of free-flowing, going into yoga poses or gymnastic style movements.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, screw this. It's not all about staying on the ground. I want to go up. So I started climbing trees on my runs. And it felt great because it was bringing me back to my childhood where I was doing exactly that, running around barefoot, ruining pairs of jeans, stopping when I couldn't run anymore, climbing trees, tumbling and wrestling with my brothers and sisters. And so, again, all the movement's in there.
The coding.
I was restoring it. And
let's go back to something real quick. So you kind of explained it, but we glazed. I mean, this is called the Break It Down for Bracken's podcast. So I want to break it down. What you're talking about, working on the foundation of our body, which would be our feet. The kind of training that it takes to inevitably be a barefoot runner. And I'm proud to say I can probably do 2 miles of nice, slow, barefoot, skin to pavement. I'll be okay. I got 2 miles in me, and I feel pretty good with that, man. Right?
If I had it my way, that would be the prerequisite to everything.
Right, and that's the thing. The amount of what I would call advanced training. Don't interrupt me because I'm gonna bring this around. What I would consider advanced training, which is rolling out my feet on a lacrosse ball, doing that towel grabbing thing where you're actually developing the movement of your feet. You're opening you can almost make them
You're grabbing with your feet.
Yeah, it's similar to hands, but not clearly as much dexterity. It's really advanced stuff. And then like going out and wearing particular shoes that have less drop, which is from the heel to toe drop, or less stack to put you closer to the earth. And then going out and test, okay, you know what, let me just try and run 200 meters nice and slow, barefoot skin. And then to go on what was ultimately a 6-year journey from wearing Asics, which had stack and heel drop, down to being as minimal as possible most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's all like really advanced stuff. And it's not sexy lifting. It doesn't look awesome. There's not a huge ROI until there is. But what's hilarious is what all this advanced extra work is actually what should be the initial work before you get into advanced stuff. Right?
The order of operations, we've had it all wrong.
Right. We're doing it in reverse. And who knows when that switched from cavemen to cowboys having heels on their boots, to, everything has a reason and a function, but they weren't always meant to go so far.
Right. Just because you can wear shoes during running doesn't mean you have to or you should, right? Because the great thing about shoes is they let you exceed your limitations.
You're right.
Right. They let you exceed your limitations. So
they're a tool.
They're a tool. If I want to run faster than I can safely run barefoot, I'm going to put shoes on. If I'm going to run on terrain that is too aggressive for my bare feet, I'm going to put shoes on. But really, outside of those two factors, okay, temperature too.
Sure.
If I'm going to be in an environment that's too hot or too cold for my bare feet, I'm going to put shoes on. But outside of that, I want running to be self-limiting. I want to always have that intuitive feedback.
And by self-limiting, you mean you can only run as far as you can healthily run.
Right.
Yeah.
On your own.
That's
accord.
so not sexy, man.
It's not.
There's no gratification in that.
But just like any progression, right, it can grow.
Right.
And, I can happily run a half marathon barefoot. And for me, that's a great, enjoyable, far but quick distance. Yeah.
Well, I know where this conversation is headed to, and I'm going to tell another quick story, but I'm really looking forward to hearing how all the things we're talking about is going to tie into what's called the wild method. But
yes, sir.
I want to share this grounding. I have two stories about the grounding, or about how being skinned to pavement can improve things. My friend Jamie, she has struggled. Jamie Haddon?
Mm-hmm.
She has struggled with some sort of weird, whether it's calf or knee or foot issue that's been going on for so long. I would see her on a Saturday morning run around town, and she'd be kind of walking or just mad at the world because she could not get the healthy movement. And I remember telling her, and I'm so happy she listens to me sometimes. I said, just take your shoes off and take your socks off, and let's carry them from here to the farmer's market. We're talking about a little over a quarter mile. And let's just jog it out. And I bet within the first 3 to 5 steps, your body will auto-adjust to protect itself on the impact and on your form. And then what I want to see if your pain goes away. And if it doesn't, I get it, man. But just try this idea. And I'm no barefoot running coach. I'm not a running coach. I'm just a guy who's done a little bit of running, and I've tried some methods myself. And dude, she took her shoes off, and she was able to run nice and slow, self-limited.
Yep.
Her body protected itself, and she had none of the pain she had when she was wearing shoes. But the coaching she's receiving, or wherever she's getting her guidance from, doesn't really have her running in 5 fingers. I'm like, I don't know. But I guess what the part of building on what we're saying is that as long as you aren't gunning to run fast or far, you can develop the foundation of healthy movement and pain-free running barefoot, where your body just does it automatically, right?
Yeah. You have to throw away, in my experience and in many of the experiences I have with my clients, you have to throw away the quantitative thinking.
But what you mean by that is 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons,
you gotta get
and
rid
time.
Of the value of time, distance, pace, all of it.
I love
because
it, man. I've gotten rid of it. I know I've gotten. People think I'm just not competitive and stuff, but I'm like, no, just don't care that hard. I'm just kind of, I love your word. It sounds way better. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, no, it's just self-limiting.
Right.
Like I'm just doing what I can do, and I feel good about
body.
it. Right.
Yeah, and that is very trendy right now.
And then again, coming closer and closer to talking about Wild Method, I do a lot of driving, whether it's running the snowplow or up and down the highway.
Isn't it?
Right. Right. Well, forget the fact of how it hems up my body for the most part, but one of the best things I can do in the spring after a long drive is I'll walk around my front yard for about a half hour just barefoot. Yeah. Some on the sidewalk, some on the pavement, some just in the grass. Man, my breathing changes. My heart rate, my blood pressure probably goes down just based on like
the connection.
Like woosah, man. I don't even know what
it is.
I
looked it up while we've been talking, and it's a negative energy from the Earth's surface. So we have the positive energy. It's got the negative energy.
That's really like woosah kind of stuff, but like who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's some science, but how it's working through my feet. It's like, hey man, I just feel it's therapeutic.
Right. We just in my language, it feels good, right?
Right.
It just feels good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who cares all the scientific stuff?
Good
It feels good, so we do it, and that is what has led to more and more experimenting of primal movement in my programs and my own conditioning and strength training. That feel-good aspect of being barefoot, I just built upon that and kind of started stripping away the layers of dependency in other places. So let's just say skin abrasion altogether, right? So friction is going to cause abrasion on the skin. So if I'm doing a grounded movement, let's say tumbling on the ground, whether it's sand or dirt or grass, if I'm not mindful of my movement and I impact the ground with too much force, I'm going to create an abrasion on, let's say, my shoulder or my back.
Right.
And that's a teaching moment, right? I wasn't mindful enough about either my intensity of the movement or the tempo of the movement or the position or posture of the movement. So it's the same thing that we've always been talking about with healthy running, right? Think about your posture, think about your breathing, and when you're in your bare feet, all of those senses are heightened. Your body awareness is heightened. So it's the same thing that we've been talking about for years in running, just applying it to all of movement.
Right, and when you say a teaching moment or you're learning a lesson by impacting the ground too hard, whether it's your heels or your shoulder or your back or your forearms even, you may have just gotten skinned up. Even on the smallest level, like with every step of running skin to pavement outdoors, your body, your brain is calculating each lesson learned with each step and then how you're talking and how it's like a computer that's just processing every step of input and how's my lean and are my knees going far enough forward? Is my heel kicking up far enough back? But without you even thinking about it, because you're working the stresses out of the day, your body will use the data it collects to avoid injury moving forward.
Yep.
Right?
Central nervous system doesn't forget anything.
Right. It's like, no, man, don't overstride. Don't understride. Hey, you're barefoot. You are definitely not, automatically you are not allowed to heel strike when you're barefoot. And it will be hard to heel strike unless you're trying to heel strike. So it's really cool how the body can process that stuff. So if we're talking about being barefoot, grass, dirt, rocks, climbing trees, if we're talking about natural movement, start to break down this wild method thing that you're working on. Tell us what it is, why it's important, please.
I'm excited about this. This is something I've been working on the side for many years. You and I have had conversations about it when I was just brainstorming ideas, and you gave me some great feedback on it, and I've talked about it with other people, and I've really just started putting all of that conceptualizing, to the ground, and making actionable steps out of it. So what I've currently been offering is a primal movement experience is one way to describe it. Another way to describe it is a holistic health and fitness opportunity.
What does that mean, holistic?
Holistic, all systems working together.
Okay.
All systems working together. And
So holistic would be part of the whole, WHOLE. But I hear the word holistic and I think HOL, which is...
So, yeah, and that's what I'm speaking in,
Okay.
HOL. So all systems of our being working together,
Oh, okay.
body, mind, soul.
Okay.
Right?
I didn't put the mind and soul into the equation of tumbling or rock climbing or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So we get, I'll go into that a little bit later, but sticking with the movement for now. The way that what's the best way to say this? Across the 8 years that I've been working in the health and wellness industry, what I see more and more a need for is a deep, rich experience for people to connect to because of how much stress we're accumulating in our lives these days. And I'm not getting through to their holistic being through a motorized treadmill workout anymore.
Right.
I'm not getting through on that deep level by sending them a workout app on their phone. Because of all of the dependencies that we have created across time,
Conveniences.
right?
Yeah.
Conveniences, and we've separated our limitations by adding things to our being. I need to strip away a lot of those dependencies. I need to seclude people away from all the distractions so they can really have this experience in health, one that they will last them weeks, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that probably similar to how you feel after a Ragnar. It's a social event.
Mm-hmm.
It's a physical event, right? You're bringing food. It's fun.
Accomplishment.
It's a deep experience, and that experience lasts you weeks, I'm sure.
Right.
And you can go back to how you felt, and something that you didn't initially feel after you finished it, you end up thinking about 3 weeks later, right? And it hits you then. And that's proof that it's still living with you, right? That experience. So I'm seeing a need, more and more of a need for a deep experience for people to restore their health more effectively in today's age. I'm currently working at a large luxury gym in the DC metropolitan area. I'm seeing people so stressed out I can almost touch it or sense it in the air.
Right.
One of the greatest accomplishments that I've had so far as a personal trainer there was working with an executive chef. And he came in, former D2 football player at JMU, and big dude, I think defensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just used to getting through stress by powering down, hunkering down, pushing through it, no pain, no gain, right? But he finally is hitting his point in his mid-30s, working a high-stress job, 2 young boys. He needs something more now. He can't just push through it. And I'd said, hey, if you're open to trying something new, here's what I want to do with you. We're going to learn how to breathe. We're going to learn how to walk, right? We're going to totally take the approach of just connecting with physical activity to lower your stress, not to improve your bench. Again,
Right.
We wiped away all the quantitative stuff.
Right.
And he bought into it. He didn't smile once during that pitch. It was like I was talking to a brick wall. I could tell the guy just wanted to fall asleep.
Right.
But he said yes. 8 weeks later, happiest guy in the gym. Comes in exuberant, high-fiving,
Nice.
Yelling across the hall, Paul!
Yeah.
Right? Full of life. And if I can provide, whether it's in a gym or on a farm or at a park, an experience for people to reconnect with themselves through movement, then that's a win for me. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so the Wild Method is kind of my first shot at it as my own brand,
right.
as my own program.
Awesome.
And I demoed some events on my in-laws' farm.
Well, hold on. Before we go there, I kind of want to make sure I understand the business side of what you're doing, right? So, a Ragnar, 8 to 12 people running trail all day, all night. It's logistically heavy. It's an enormous amount of work just to get there. Running a Spartan or a Tough Mudder, even the short distance, you got to do a ton of pre-training to be able to handle those sort of advanced functional movements. But again, both of those scenarios are big. They require a lot of prep. And you do get that sense of satisfaction and accomplishment and camaraderie and community. And you get all those good feelings for days and days afterwards. What you're talking about is stripping away the quantitative, working on hyper basic movements, being with yourself, in my mind, barefoot, and you're going to explain how
Keep your clothes on, though.
Yeah. But you're creating a easily digestible programming that would give you the same experience as a massive, I'm imagining,
Yes.
as a massive event.
Brother.
So that's really cool, man. So if I'm correct on that, break down what one of these things look like.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the brand is called Wild Recreational Fitness Challenges. And the Wild Method is what you subscribe to get through the Recreational Fitness Challenge.
Okay.
So what that looks like is a 2-hour event is kind of the entry level, right? And you come into that 2-hour event, and I explain the Wild Method. And the Wild Method is, this qualitative based, self-limiting based style of movement, being mindful of everything, right? All of our movements, the breathing, and our tempo, our pace.
The body's response to
Right.
what you're doing.
Connecting with the environment around us, whether that's running, climbing, scooting, whatever, weightlifting. So you come in, I explain the method, we do some testing, right? Just some trialing, practice, and then we begin.
I'm imagining balance beams. I'm imagining walking on logs.
Yeah.
Or picking up rocks and moving them, like those sort of tests.
Some of those may be involved, yes.
Okay, cool, yeah. Well, yeah, I get it. It's a secret.
But
yeah, I'm imagining those sort of functional. Hey, if you can't do this, let's work on these moves, right?
Yeah, this is anybody can do what I'm offering.
Right.
One of my demos in December, I had a 55, 56-year-old female. I had late 40s. I had a person in their young 20s. I've offered some that are just females based. I've done some that are just male based and co-ed. So I'm really playing around with a lot of those social aspects. But getting back to the method, you come in, you don't know anything about this. You get kind of a crash course in it. We start doing some practicing, and then the challenge begins. And the first challenge is this is all outdoors on very hilly terrain. My in-laws' farm is an organic sheep farm, so it's rolling hills, pasture land, creeks, ponds, and that for me, that's like a gold mine, right? Because I have all these different stimuluses to expose to people to expose themselves to. So the first challenge is a 1 hour functional or cross-country functional fitness workout. So it's a mix of functional exercises, body weight, as well as movements with a dumbbell, kettlebell, or a log, or a rock, like you mentioned, mixed with running. Right. So do a little bit of that stuff, run to point B, do some more, run to point C. All right. So across an hour, you've done a bunch of running, cross-country style running. You've done some functional fitness, all the while self-limiting and focus on the quality of the moments, because I'm there by your side coaching you on that. After that challenge is complete, we then take what we've built, which is a high core temperature, and we do cold water immersion. Because if you want to get to know yourself deeply and be very mindful of everything you're doing, put yourself in really cold water, and you'll figure out quickly that you need to be as still as possible to retain your warmth, right? Because if in the beginning stages of cold water exposure, the more you move around, the more you're getting rid of that little thin layer of warm water that's closest to your body.
Right.
So, and then also the shock factor. A lot of people, if we're just getting into cold water exposure, first reaction they want to have to the cold water is gasp.
Right.
But in order to override that, we need to do the exact opposite. Instead of inhaling with a gasp, we need to exhale with a growl.
Okay.
Right. So we override our reflex with mindfulness, and that is a powerful moment, because you overcome a huge obstacle, a physiological obstacle, and then you have to maintain mindful breathing and physical stillness to stay in the water. And our challenge is a 5-minute cold water immersion. And it's been so fun to watch all the different reactions and see. I've had experienced endurance athletes, and again, I've had people in their late 50s, Gen Pop, crushing it.
Nice.
And it's that challenge has been really cool. And these are going to change with the seasons, but you walk away from that in a small group setting, keeping it to anywhere from 2 to 12 people.
Right.
Because I want to protect the intimacy of a small group.
Is it better with friends or with strangers?
That's a good question. I'm
thinking of like 3 or 4 bros. We could all come out there and try this.
You gotta try it. Get some bros, get some bras.
Yeah.
And let's get it rocking.
Okay.
I've had friends show up together, but really it's been a mix of strangers and friends. But they all leave with that camaraderie. Right. They all leave, all having accomplished it, and they have this experience now to connect to each other too. Some of the strangers that have completed this have remained in touch.
That's
I'm
cool.
saying a very similar experience to what you've done with Bros and Bras. You're bringing a bunch of strangers together to connect over something.
Yeah. That is a really, really cool concept. And it's backed up by years of advanced study and exposure to very successful minds in the industry. And you're the first person I would think of when it comes to experiential education or outdoor kind of life training. And Paul, you're a role model. I mean,
thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, you definitely are. And when you see people who do as much, I'll call it simply mobility, that you do, and that you work with your body in a way to stay fit, with cardiovascular training and with strength training, you're actually doing you're truly building the foundations. I mean, you can go out and run a nice fast 5K and you can be destroyed and winded afterwards, or you can just be like, wow. Or even a half marathon is probably more duress on the body, but you can get it done. You can get it done in an appropriate time or even a fast time. But if you don't have those foundations built, you're more prone potentially for injury.
Yep.
You're more prone for internal duress.
Sure.
Your internal systems. And
longer recovery periods.
oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then, like, sometimes I get grilled because I don't do enough running or I focus too much. Like, I will do a 90-minute workout at the gym, and an hour and 5 to hour and 10 of it was stretching, functional movements, never even lifted a weight. And then I only really do 20 to 30. I only lift for a short amount of time, and I don't have a huge caloric burn, but my body moves so much more fluidly. And I'm not dedicated just to yoga. But I guess what I'm saying is what you're teaching people and what this wild method is, from what I understand, is it's going to take you down a path of healthy movement, but also getting in touch with yourself and how it feels to be in nature, in particular with the
That's it, brother.
Yeah.
When I look at it in a nutshell, I want people to have an experience that is brought together by nature, human connection, whole food, and healthy movement. If I can bring those 4 things together in one experience, I know the odds of that person having an enriching, restoring experience are pretty high. My wife and I like to joke, if you use it's hard to mess up a meal with a bunch of garlic, if you like garlic like we do.
right.
So, to the same effect, the ingredients that I'm using, it's hard to go wrong when you use outdoors, nature, exposure, time in nature, when you teach people healthy movement, when you put healthy food in front of people, and you give them an opportunity to be social. Those are all ingredients that are hard to screw up.
That's awesome, man. And then this is getting started, or is it, it already is started, or is there an official grand opening, or has it already,
So I've soft launched this. You can find it at Wild Recreational Fitness Challenges. That's my Facebook page. Now, the Wild Method will be the programming that supports the events, okay? So the Wild Method is something that you can work with me on virtually, as well as in person, outside of the events, to equip yourself more and more for the wild events that will occur throughout the year.
It's awesome, man. That's awesome. So there's a Facebook page, and we'll put those links in the notes. And then there's also a website, which should be launched soon.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And once that's up and running, we'll put that in the notes too.
Yes, sir.
And if people want to get a hold of you through the website, through the Facebook page, is there an email?
wild.rfc@gmail.com.
That's easy. Well, cool, man. You and I could really sit and talk about healthy movement and
Yeah, we can talk
working
all
with
day.
Dr. Mark and all, and how awesome the True Form
Gotta have
runner
part
is.
2. I think would be a great idea. You brought it up in the beginning, and I concur. Is a part 2. Let's have Kevin, when he gets his video gear linked up with the podcast, we do a round 2 of this so we can get some of that movement into the podcast.
Definitely. And I don't want to do another podcast until I've gone through the
Yeah.
thing. That would be cool too, so I can come back and reflect on, whoa, that was really fun. So, all right, Paul. Well, thank you for being on the Break It Down for Brackets podcast, bud.
It's been a pleasure.
I really appreciate you being here. Thanks. Today's intro song is called Mean in a Good Way. It's written and performed by Peter Clark off of his album Peter Clark After Dark. Peter describes this song as being the best song to learn hula hooping to. Peter is an avid hooper and recently started a hula hoop repair business. If you ever need hula hoop repair, consider contacting Peter. You can reach him on SoundCloud. Just search Peter Clark After Dark.